Hello, I'm Pip Courtney. Welcome to A Taste of Landline, our showcase of the very best in Australian food, farming and more. On today's show, urban farms feeding the needy.
Sweet potato, it's so versatile, so it can go across any number of dishes.
The most expensive milk you'll ever buy.
Our main issue is to take it from that cottage industry and jump it into a commercial, sell the product overseas.
And freezing Aussie berries.
Hello, I'm Tim Lee. Sweet potatoes aren't big on the average Australian diet, but for one of Australia's largest charities, it's become something of a staple. The trouble is, it's based in Melbourne, and the question is, can this tropical vegetable be grown in such a temperate climate? Wedged between tall buildings, train lines, power lines and other urban ugliness, it's not the prettiest of plots. But this community garden is a public asset and the testing ground for a wonderful experiment.
The ironic thing is, if you look at old gardening guides in Australia, you will see sweet potatoes mentioned as a crop. For some reason, they just dropped off the list of backyard vegetables sometime in the 60s and 70s.
Sweet potato is widely grown in tropical regions around the world. Scientists believe it was domesticated in Central America at least 5,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest and most important vegetables known to humankind.
Globally, we say there's about 5,000 or 6,000 varieties, which is really extraordinary, considering we only grow a few commercially in Australia.
But can plants that originate in the humid tropics tolerate Melbourne's cold climate? Therein lies the trial's big question.
I think the whole point of horticulture and investigating these kind of issues is how do you work with some of the limitations? And sure, it's a tropical crop, but it's been pushed to slightly cooler climates over thousands of years, really.
The other key partner in this crop trial is the Melbourne food charity Fair Share. At its nearby kitchen in Abbotsford, it cooks and distributes nutritious meals to people in need.
In a nutshell, we make 5,000 meals a day that we give away free to charities throughout Victoria.
The work goes on 6 days a week around the clock in a kitchen run almost entirely by volunteers. Most of the food, surplus quality produce from supermarkets, farmers and businesses, is donated and so rescued from otherwise going into landfill. Among the charity's recipients are migrants and refugees who relish sweet potato in their diet.
Sweet potato, it's so versatile, so it can go across any number of dishes that we make here at Fair Share, from vegetable rolls, veggie quiches, soups, and also it allows us to make a few more culturally appropriate foods for different groups around Melbourne. So for today, for example, we made a sweet potato and red lentil dal for the Asylum Seekers Resource Centre.
Faced with the logistical challenges of making so many meals, Kelly Watson hit on the idea of establishing community gardens. The longer shelf life of crops such as potatoes makes them a vital ingredient.
Well, root vegetables are really valuable to us because they last a long time in a cool room situation. So if we crop, say, a whole 3,000 metres at Victoria Park, for example, we can hold that for weeks in our cool room. Whereas if you did a similar thing with silver beet, you'd more or less looking at a top of 4 days.
Fair Share now grows produce in 3 gardens, one in the inner city and 2 in outer Melbourne suburbs.
The bulk of where we grow the food is here at the Bagley Farm, so it's all based on the generosity of a family. Currently we have about 2 acres.
Les Bagley is a 4th generation market gardener whose family has tilled the soil here for 120 years.
Production's incredible. I've got some yams I'm trialling, okra. I think there's a lot of potential there.
Over the last couple of years, we've found it very hard to secure enough vegetables to make sure each meal was having adequate nutrition. And with the advent of our vegetable gardens, a year on, we've found that they're supplying 30% of all of our vegetable requirements, which is just fantastic. They're also giving us an increase of variety of what we can use.
Like FareShare's kitchen, here again it's an army of volunteers who cultivate and harvest these fields.
So everything we grow gets picked and then heads to the kitchen straight away, and then it's put into the FareShare meals. So it's pretty much as fresh as you can get.
Les Bagley has a host of unusual crops, a love of the weird and wonderful, and a talent for growing just about anything. This is bitter melon.
It's just people in the Asian and Indian community eating them, really, but so...
All Australians, they don't try this sort of stuff, do they?
Still conservative.
Yeah, they are.
But it's these trial beds of sweet potatoes that have him most excited.
You got them cracking through the soil yet?
Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah, here. Look at this. Look at that. Who says they can't grow sweet potatoes?
They said it couldn't be done. There you go, Susie.
That's amazing.
Oh, it's incredible. I think they dug 300 kilos off a 40-metre bed. It's just, I'm blown away by it. That's one potato. Look at that.
That's about as big as a Beauregard gets.
Multiculturalism and a growing awareness of the nutritional value of some of these lesser-known crops have thrust them into the culinary spotlight.
But also people are aware of the fact that the coloured ones, so the orange and the purple ones, have these pigments like the anthocyanins that people have become very aware of them as an antioxidant, so they have become to be associated with the sort of superfood concept.
And Chris Williams believes that home gardeners play a vital role in preserving old crop varieties that have long fallen from commercial favour, such as the American white yam, which is actually a sweet potato.
This is a very old one, not really commercially grown in the States anymore, but it's more potatoey than most sweet potatoes. Very starchy, very delicious. It doesn't have the colour that a lot of people seek in a sweet potato, but even better, it grows really well in Melbourne. So pretty productive. Let's see how your ochre crop's gone. Shall we scratch away and dig some up?
Yeah, let's go.
So sweet potatoes, there's thousands of varieties globally. Gardeners can become part of the sort of global effort to preserve agrobiodiversity, because if they're growing varieties that are not really ever going to be commercially grown, they can be enjoying textures and flavours and different coloured foliage that normally that might actually go extinct. Let's go get Jenny to cook them up.
But above all, this clever collaboration is about making a difference.
I enjoy helping people and teaching students how to grow this stuff. You can grow different crops in Victoria. Just because we're a temperate climate doesn't mean you can't have a go.
No, we don't use the F word if we can help it.
Texturally, it's more, I would say, closer to lamb than anything else, but the flavour, slightly more gamey, but it is a very versatile meat.
Hello, I'm Kerry State. Camel Milk is gaining momentum in Australia, with the number and size of dairies on the rise. But despite it being the most expensive milk you're likely to see on the shelf, turning these feral desert dwellers into domestic cash cows is harder than farmers anticipated.
All right, up, up, up.
Easy.
Come on, mamas.
Easy. Easy. Up, up.
From the wilds of Central Australia to a camel dairy 180 kilometres north of Melbourne.
Coming up your side, Steve.
She'll come back round. What are you doing, woman?
This latest load of arrivals has a big adjustment to make.
Come on. There's one in every pack.
Gentle, gentle, mama.
They get left off this truck and go, where am I? Where are my friends? Where's the smells, the places I know? So they're scared. They don't know what to expect.
It's okay, mama.
Camel has set up an $8 million pilot farm funded by investors from the United Arab Emirates.
There are currently around 200 animals at this property, including 40 milkers.
All the way. Walk up. Come on, Mama.
But the company has an ambitious goal: to build a network of farmers across Victoria with a combined herd of 10,000 milking camels.
There she goes. 81's let down. 16 hasn't yet.
How long does it take, I guess, to get to that sort of milking stage?
We had one camel where we could have her in a race and touching and everything within a week. Like, she was fine to be able to even touch the udder and start stimulating the udder within a week, where another camel, we've been working on her for about three months now. So we're still trying to get her in, to get her to have the relationship with us and to let her know that we're not so scary.
Half an hour down the road near Kyabram is another farm where patience leads to productivity. Chris Williams first came across camels while working on a beef property in the outback, where they were seen more as pests. Now, after 3 years of working more closely with them, he and his wife Megan have a new appreciation.
It was very frustrating to begin with, yeah, but yeah, one day it just happens and
it clicks.
It clicks. And then you understand the animal, and then from then on it is really rewarding, and you can just look in a camel's eye and you can tell what it's thinking, and you can tell how trusting it is, or
what it's going to allow you to do.
Or how far it's going to allow you to go before it allows you to trust it. Like they train you as much as you train them.
Camel milk has been a staple among nomadic tribes for thousands of years, but it is a young commercial industry. And for these former dairy cattle farmers, the novelty was part of the attraction.
Who thinks it's going to get some milk, eh? You think you're going to get some milk?
We wanted something niche, and we researched many different things: milking goats, buffalo, even miniature Herefords at one stage. And then we heard you can milk camels.
It's been an interesting journey so far, often 3 steps forward and 2 back.
Sure.
Something they've learned very quickly is one size does not fit all, with plenty of tweaks needed to this former cattle dairy.
I spent the first 12 months with a welder strapped to my back and angle grind in my pocket.
It's not just these larger cows they need to accommodate for, but their offspring too. While the role of the young camels varies from dairy to dairy, here the babies stay with their mums to help stimulate milk production through the whole lactation period, which can last up to 2 years.
You start off with cute little cuddly calves that are about 40 kilos, and then they grow up at 18 months old, they're about 300 or 400 kilos. So you're feeding 2 animals, you're managing 2 animals. You have to get that calf and that camel to work together to fit in with what we want so that we can get the milk.
Once camels let down their milk, the next challenge is to get enough out of them. Most Australian dairies average between 5 and 6 litres an animal a day, whereas dairy cattle produce 3 to 4 times that amount.
What is similar, according to many producers, is the flavour of the milk.
People's first perception is, ugh, camel's milk, because it's so foreign to them. And then by the time they have their little taste, they go, oh, it tastes just like cow's milk, you know, slightly salter aftertaste.
First, you have to convince consumers it's actually worth tasting.
We've got quite a rich, creamy milk, which we find that fits better into the marketplace. We've been selling milk now for about 2.5 years, and certainly in the first few months it was, you don't make any money, and it's like any new business. It takes a little while for you to sort of start to turn over those dollars and see a return.
Lauren Brisbane exports a little of her fresh pasteurised milk to Singapore and New Zealand, but at this stage mainly relies on domestic retailers like this store near her farm.
Sales are going really well. I think we got through about 18 this week, so it's going up and up, yeah.
While sales are increasing, The price tag, which tops $20 a litre in some states, is also a deterrent for many shoppers, especially when there are so many alternative milks to pick from. But farmers say what looks excessive on the shelf barely covers the cost of production.
We couldn't have budgeted for how much it was going to cost to just get a litre of milk from a camel. You know, having been no major research or industry, you know, we had to work it out ourselves and then go, well, this is actually what it costs. This is, you know, we've got to make it affordable for our consumers. And in the last 2 years, we've certainly got it down over $10 in 2 years. And as, you know, farm efficiencies improve, well, that will come down even further.
This farm at Harrisville, southwest of Brisbane, has launched a camel milk Persian feta and is also selling ice cream, as the operators try to get more people to see camels in a new light.
In a land like Australia, we've got this animal that can survive, you know, through pretty well anything, the worst things that our Mother Nature can throw at it. And you know, we're shooting it. So, and yet it produces meat, it produces milk, it, you know, produces fat products for other stuff, hide, you know, leather. So, I mean, it's an amazing animal.
Former beef producer and grain grower Paul Martin and his business partner Jeff Flood have set up the Australian Wild Camel Corporation. The farm has a milking herd of around 65 animals, making it the biggest dairy in the country. And this is just the start-up phase, with plans to build a much larger facility over the next few years that will accommodate 1,000 milkers. Local investors have so far put in around half of the $15 million Paul Martin says it will cost to reach their commercial goal.
Our main issue is to take it from that cottage industry and get it, we've got to jump that hurdle and get it into a commercial where we can sell the product overseas on volume.
And these are the products he particularly wants that extra volume for. Instead of flooding the market with fresh milk, the entrepreneur says right now he's focused on turning it into skincare.
Overseas, Asia is a massive market for skin and anti-aging products, and if we want to actually, you know, sell container loads to overseas consumers, you know, we've got to have, you know, the first thing they ask is, can you supply? And you know, the worst thing we could do is deliver one load and then not, you know, be able to deliver a second.
In its infancy is a phrase you hear a lot when talking about Australia's camel milk industry. But producers like Chris and Megan Williams are making room for a growth spurt. They bought a new farm and are converting this old dairy into a milking depot fit for more than 200 camels.
We're very excited for what the future holds because there's so much unknown. Like, it can be daunting, but it's exciting. You know.
It's going to be a very long journey. We're only just at the start.
Yeah, so. We're literally just at the start.
As for Lauren Brisbane, while she warns it is a risky industry to invest in, she also believes that patience and a passion for these surprisingly gentle and often cheeky giants will pay off.
You want my hat? Do you want my hat? We have a real opportunity to develop this industry and be able to supply milk around the world if we all work together.
At the end of the Vietnam War, men, women and children escaped by boat and sailed to Australia.
You take it off. But that's very attractive. And eating a cool room in the afternoon.
With the Asian flavors and you have the Asian ingredients, wow.
Hello, I'm Fiona Breen. Two of Australia's small fruit growers are hoping to convince customers that local is not only tastier, it's safer. They're now freezing their own locally grown, locally processed berries. In the cool, early mornings, this strawberry farm northeast of Melbourne is at its busiest. Workers are picking at dawn before the fruit warms up. Today's harvest is Albion strawberries.
Albion's characterised having a really red colour, red flesh all the way through.
Matt Galache knows his strawberries. He grew up on the family's first berry farm on Victoria's Mornington Peninsula. Now the family runs 320 hectares of berries across 3 properties in Victoria and Queensland.
Predominantly the farm here is for the fresh market. When obviously the seasonal factors influence market price, and when that price drops below a certain level, we'll stop picking for the fresh market and we'll let the fruit ripen just that little bit more so it gets that little bit more sugar and a little bit more colour into the fruit, and then we'll go through and pick it for the frozen.
It was a hepatitis A health scare linked to imported berries 2 years ago that prompted the couple to invest in the latest freezing technology. Nana's and creative gourmet brand Frozen Berries were pulled from the shelves in 2015 after the Victorian Health Department revealed possible links between the foreign processed berries and multiple cases of hepatitis A.
People didn't know or care where their fruit came from in the frozen aisle. When the Hep A scare came out, it became the forefront of people's minds, and all of a sudden there was an opportunity.
Is it good? Yeah, good. It's good? It's nice and red. It's good.
The Galaches believe the demand for locally grown and processed food is growing. They've set up a $500,000 purpose-built facility in the Yarra Valley.
The thing with overseas grown fruit is there's no traceability, there's no accountability. We don't know what the growing practices are. There's of course different practices and standards all around the world. And the way the labelling laws are in Australia, you can't be confident even about the country of origin of what you're buying. So fruit could be grown in one area, that could be packed in a different country.
The strawberries at the Galaches farms are all hand-picked and graded before being washed and individually snap frozen. It's the washing that this family believes sets its berries apart from the overseas processed fruit.
They come through the washer, it goes through the blast freezer. There's not a lot of time in between that picking and blast freezing, and it's ensured that you get a product that's uncompromised.
They're confident more Australian consumers will be prepared to pay more for locally grown and frozen fruit that is a guaranteed food-safe product.
And I think that people are just more informed and more concerned about the origins of their food these days for a whole host of reasons, food safety being one. But you know, there's so many reasons to buy Australian, and we've found that we've got a really loyal customer who has either gone off frozen fruit completely and they've returned to the category, or of course have switched over.
Tasmanian berry farmers, the Clark family, are also producing a locally grown and frozen product. Their berries are grown at Westaway in the Derwent Valley, northwest of Hobart. Rob Clark planted berries on these fertile old hop fields 40 years ago.
The traditional berries in Tasmania have been blackcurrants. People know the blackcurrant syrups that are sold. We grow raspberries, and that's for processing and a little bit of fresh market. We have blackberries we're standing in at the moment.
The move into frozen value adding started with a very timely trial run a couple of years ago.
We actually froze 3,000 or 4,000 packs just on a hunch the year before or the season before the problem with imported frozen berries. Those berries hit shelves moments after the outbreak had happened, and they were snapped up almost immediately. So we ran out immediately, but then we started planning how we could grow and how we could be more efficient in doing those frozen berries.
The black currants and the dark red Willamette raspberries ripen in summer and are picked and snap frozen all on the one day.
The benefit of using liquid nitrogen as opposed to conventional freezing is the speed at which those berries are frozen. And by freezing very quickly, you get very limited crystallisation forming inside the berry, ice crystallisation, and therefore when those berries thaw out, they're actually not too dissimilar to when they went in. They don't go very soft, very mushy, and they retain a lot of their flavour.
In the end, it will be the supermarkets and the consumers that will dictate whether Australia's emerging frozen berry ranges will survive against the cut-price versions coming from overseas.
The price is only a little bit more. I think Australians will consider the value of buying Australian product and the surety and the knowledge of where that product came from. So I think we can compete on a value basis rather than a price basis.
And that's the show. Thanks for your company. And if you want more Landline, we're on iView and Facebook. Next week on A Taste of Landline, Australian caught ready-to-eat tuna.
They're cooked inside a jar, that's what they're getting.
A game changer for Australian growers.
The weather's getting more and more unpredictable and the value of the crop's getting higher and higher, so protective cropping will become more and more common.
And a high-tech twist on wool growing.